Hey everybody, today we're talking about conference proposals. Now, this means that you will be preparing to write a short proposal for a conference that's in the near future related to educators. Now, this is something that I think is really important for people in higher education, professors, but also for practicing teachers. And I'm talking about this today because proposing a session for a conference was not something that anyone ever talked to me about when I was a classroom teacher until I started working on my PhD. So once I started working on my PhD, they said, oh, you need to start participating in the conferences, not just showing up to an education conference, but actually presenting something. And they said, it's good, the first year you should be on a panel with somebody. The second year, you should organize a panel for people. And then the next year, you should probably be proposing your own kinds of sessions. And I was like, what am I proposing sessions about? Well, this is what we're talking about today, because when I was a classroom teacher, I thought nobody wants to hear anything I have to talk about because I'm going to these conferences so I can learn stuff and bring it back to my classroom. I didn't think that anyone really cared about the things that I was doing in my classroom until once I started getting into my PhD. So this was a whole nother realm of thinking about myself as a leadership, but also thinking about myself as a professional. And it was really a validating experience when I did put forth my first proposal and I was accepted and welcomed. And it wasn't all that exciting when I had my first presentation because I think there might have been 2 or 3 people in the room, because when people are looking at the list of sessions and they don't know who you are, they may not come to your session unless it's an especially great title or abstract or summary. Another thing we're going to be talking about today, how to write a proposal that has a great title and has a great abstract, and that is going to likely be accepted because it's related to the content that's at the conference that you're going to. So now you're going to go to the conference, you're going to also present. And I think this is a great way of thinking about reciprocity, that you're going, you're getting something and you're giving something back. The only downside to this whole conference thing is that not all conferences have free registration for presenters, which I think is something that they should do. But a lot of conferences are dependent on presenters to bring their numbers up. So the more people who propose and present, then those are kind of guaranteed attend conference. And that's a big base of the people who are attending the conference. So today I really want to talk about, number one, I want to inspire classroom teachers to think that, yes, you have a place at the table at these conferences, and I hope that you propose something. Number two, people who are in doctoral students, you need to start feeling the experience of presenting and getting your name on programs and building up your CV as evidence of you sharing the great reading and research that you're doing in your PhD program. We don't want to keep it a secret, friends. We want you to share the things that you're learning. And I think that's kind of the other side of teachers who are always so humble and don't want to really draw too much attention to themselves. The idea is that you have something to say and we want to hear it. And if you're doing something great in your classroom, don't keep it a secret and share it with other teachers so that we can learn from you. And this is a really important piece too. And then third is higher education faculty who are in assistant or associate or full professors who are doing great research or have great activities in their classroom. We want you to go to these conferences and write proposals so we can hear about your research. It's another way of disseminating research. You might write this beautiful, incredible article, and that's published in a really reputable journal, but it's behind a paywall and people aren't going to be able to read it. But if you take the same or similar content from your research article and put it into a presentation at a conference, you could have 1 or 30 or 50 or 100 people in the room hearing about your research, and then they're going to tell somebody else and they're going to tell somebody else, and they might even find your article, or you give them your article for free when they come to your session, something like that. So this session that I'm talking about, this tutorial that I'm going to give you right now, is really for a classroom teacher writing a proposal, for a PhD student writing a proposal, for a higher education faculty member writing a proposal for a conference, and some of the ways that you might prepare to then submit this proposal. So we're going to talk about that today. All right, so when we are thinking about any kind of do as teachers, as educators, as research. We want to think about the writing process. It's not just for the students that we're teaching. We want to think about the writing process or a writing process that might work for you. So in other words, don't just like, put something together and send it off. Take a little bit of time and you'll have a better chance of getting accepted and you'll feel much more ready when it comes time to start preparing a presentation, which will be for another video. Okay, so the first thing is to look at the writing process, and this is a version of many writing processes that I follow and I have kind of have adapted to make my own a little bit that aligns with my writing instruction. Okay, so the first, you jump in wherever you are, depending on where you are with your idea. If you already have your idea, if you already know all about the conference, if you're all familiar with it, you can jump in here at any point. But I typically start with gathering ideas, then move into studying mentor texts or studying sample proposals. As a teacher, I like to model my process, or I like to really think through and be really conscious about the writing and intentional about the moves that I'm making in my writing. I have a draft of that. I redraft it. Then I look at the genre in particular and try to really study what's happening in those mentor texts and then revise my proposal based on the mentor texts. It's great to have a trusted peer look at your proposal and give you some really positive feedback, looking at the mentor text and looking at the genre-specific lessons that you might have. I think that's really important. Then you refine your proposal one more time before you move into publication. And publication in this case just means submitting your proposal. And then you might look for other conferences and make more proposals while you're waiting for your acceptance. So you can move through this process several times. For me, I like to go to a local conference every year, one that's in my state of Oklahoma, a national conference, the National Council of Teachers of English. Sometimes I go to a second national conference, Literacy Research Association. Sometimes I go to an international conference. This year, I'm also going to a couple other affiliate or state conferences too. I thought about applying to another one in Texas, but now it starts adding up and it's a lot because conferences are not free. There's registration. Sometimes there's also travel. And if you have to stay overnight in a hotel, there's that too, and plus food. So conferences can really add up. That's for another topic. Okay. So the first part, gathering ideas. The way that you want to think about how you can create your proposal for this conference is by looking at the intersection of your interests and expertise and the call for proposals, because you want to align your interest and your expertise with what's happening at that conference or what the conference really wants to have happen. So the more aligned your idea is with the conference proposal, when you're at that intersection right there, the better chances you have of being accepted and the better chances of it making sense once you present at the conference. So brainstorm topics related to your unit or area of interest that intersects for the call for proposals. So in example, you might look at past programs and find out what kind of content was there, what kind of topics and things. And instead of trying to duplicate what was there in the past, you might say, well, what was missing and how can I fill in some of the gaps? So we were talking about this in our class and we noticed that in some of the local conferences, there was a sort of an absence of speakers who were pre-service teachers or conference or sessions for pre-service teachers. So those were a couple things that we were noticing. And then exploring ideas for your proposal through some flash writing. So you might take a topic that you're thinking about and do a little bit of writing to see, can you really flesh this out into something that could be a workshop? So bringing teachers into a practice, telling them about something that you learned, introducing them to a new author or different kinds of texts. Can you hand out different examples of text? Can you take them through a writing workshop? Could you have them do some pair share, some presenting, ways to get the teachers really engaged? So you might do some flash draft there. So you might pause the video right now and flash draft. Like what might be some topics of interest right now that you're coming up with that might be at the intersection for the call for proposals. So let's look at this one example of a call for proposals. So first you want to make sure that you read the call for proposals, because they have probably the organizers, and the organizers are the one reading your proposals. The organizers are going to be looking for specific things. So this one, we're going to look at our Oklahoma Fall Conference for Teachers of English. And this is focusing on native voices. So if you read the call, they really are aiming to explore and celebrate unique narratives, literary traditions, language expressions of Indigenous American communities. So they're really focused on Indigenous literature, storytelling, language revitalization, oral tradition, writing as a tool for cultural preservation, the intersection of identity and narrative. All of these things you might have some expertise in, or you might have taken a class in Indigenous literature, or you might have a great unit on Indigenous literature or writing or storytellers or living authors who are fantastic, or poets. Any of those things would be great to bring to this conference. But then it says below, other proposals might include elementary writing, elementary literacy, pre-service novice teacher information, general literature, general writing. So it does really kind of signal that it's open to different kinds of proposals. The proposals also have to be considerate of a 45-minute presentation slot, and you only have 150 words to say your idea. So another great part about a proposal is that you don't have to have the entire thing fleshed out yet. They just want to hear your idea, and if you're accepted, then you will plan the 45-minute session and lead the presentation. So at this point, you don't need to have it all worked out. You just have to have a pretty strong idea. But again, looking at the proposal might also help you gather ideas. The second step is to look at and study mentor text. So if you have a previous program that you can look at from that conference, or any other conference that's related to your field, you can study a few that have been accepted. So if it's in the program, it means it's been accepted in the past. So there might be some good things in there that you might want to mimic, um, or inspire the kinds of writing that you might do for your proposal. So when you look at the mentor text, identify some key elements that make the text effective, and create a list of the criteria that you're going to notice. You could also consult librarians, platforms like Ethical ELA for some mentor text too. So I should say that even though I probably presented, oh my gosh, 100 presentations, maybe. Oh gosh, I don't know. I was also the director for the Young Adult Literature Summit for the last 5 years, and we would take in between 50 and 100 proposals every year that we would be sorting through. So we get a sense of what we like or what looks good. We can tell when people took the time to look at mentor text and to do a writing process before they submitted, versus some people who just kind of wrote down a couple sentences of their proposal. That was a little too informal and almost always was immediately rejected. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay, so let's look at this example. This is from NCTE 2024. It's already been accepted. That it hasn't even been presented yet, but this is a good one that we just want to look at, right? So if you look at this, we're studying a mentor text here. So what do we notice? The title, moving from spectators to players in education conversations, writing for publication. So that title is really informative. It's descriptive. It adds to, but it should not duplicate the description, because you have two pieces of information where you can add details. You got a title and you have a description, and you don't want to duplicate information in those two things, because the people have already read the title. They already know that part. The description should elaborate or offer something new. And I think that's a lot of words in that title. Sometimes the title doesn't have as many word limits, which is kind of good. But we have writing for publication is really key, and it seems like there's some movement or agency kind of happening in that. The second thing, we move to the description. Look how short this is. This is probably not even 100 words. Classroom teachers must engage as public scholars. So this is kind of a call to classroom teachers. So we have a who is this for? Contributing to and disrupting conversations about education, especially when our voices are missing from journals and policies. So the our, OUR, indicates this is classroom teachers engaging with public scholars. So these are two kinds of who's are going to be here. The workshop provides time and tools to examine teacher-crafted articles from contemporary journals. This is kind of great. So you have classroom teachers who are writing journals. So it's a workshop, that's a what, and it's providing time and tools. Oregon Writing Project coaches and authors offer both strategies and a platform for participants to kickstart drafts. So they're going to get teachers writing at this session. So that's what you can expect. The how is missing a little bit. I'm not really sure what the strategies are or what the tools are, but maybe they're trying to keep you into. The thing that's missing for me, or that I want to be alerted to as someone who has directed conferences, is we want to know what this is grounded in. What are the key terms? What is the research behind it? Well, these people signaled Oregon Writing Project. The Writing Project is a nationally recognized organization, and that has some pretty fundamental teaching teachers grounded in writing processes. So just saying Oregon Writing Project signals the grounding philosophy and theory. So that's really important, and it doesn't have to have a text citation in it. Sometimes you might drop the name of some sort of theory in there, and that would be a good thing too. So let's look at one more. So this one, designing spaces for students to reshape their world, and anti-racist pedagogy workshop. So we have right away, there's a theory is signaled there. And it's a pretty descriptive title. Then the description, students bring to the literacy classroom a wealth of resources, such as linguistic competencies and reasons to compose. So these are some key buzzwords also that show asset-based approaches. Yet their literacy education is often only designed for them to prove what they can meet state standards. So that also speaks to a critical pedagogy here. The anti-racist workshop will teach participants, so that's the who, and it seems very welcoming because it just says participants. It doesn't say classroom teachers or higher ed. How to design and assess assignments that guide students' use of these resources. Okay, so we're going to learn how to design and assess the assignments, but we don't know like what framework, but I guess it's going to be anti-racist pedagogy framework. That's helpful too. Okay, so here's another, so we're studying mentor texts here. It's really helpful to look at these. Okay, so the next, I like to think about, if I'm teaching, to model my own practice as far as writing a research proposal. But I think it's really helpful for you to be thinking, doing like kind of a think aloud as you start drafting or doing a flash draft of your proposal. So let's think about this. My expertise is in writing and poetry. I've done some recent genocide workshops that I'm going to be preparing that I want to share. Also healing through poetry. So we have some of these words for me, my expertise. And then thinking about the call, writing as a tool for cultural preservation. This was something that came out when I was in Armenia, and also when I was studying Holocaust education, how we want to use writing as a way of narrating or telling the story behind artifacts that are important for preserving our story. Also, I've been doing a lot of reading of the poetry of different cultures, so I have that too. So thinking about language revitalization through writing. So I think I can maybe think through how to bring maybe writing poetry with indigenous literature and Armenia. One of the things about Armenia is that they talked about how Armenians are indigenous to that region. And people don't often know that or think about that or even know where Armenia is. And so while this is not Native American indigenous people, it's thinking about indigeneity in another space. So that might be a nice connection that the conference organizers might like. So I can think about that. Okay, so here's a sample draft of an idea that I had for this proposal. So place-based poetry and digital storytelling, teaching indigenous Armenians past and present in the ELA classroom. So I was trying to connect Armenians, indigenous people, with the call and bringing in poetry and digital storytelling. So storytelling was another word in the call that I'm kind of bringing it up. So this workshop introduces high school ELA. So I'm focusing on my target audience for the workshop. An approach that blends place-based poetry and digital storytelling to look at Armenia's past and present. and I'm using the Zip Ode poem. So I'm going to teach a Zip Ode poem and how to turn that into a YouTube short. So participants will, so whoever comes, engage in the history of Armenian genocide while discovering how Indigenous Armenian culture continues to thrive today. So that's really the goal of this. And I'm gonna show maps and this Zip Ode poem, and then how to like merge that with technology. So this intersection of poetry and digital storytelling. So that's really like my proposal here. And so I've highlighted some, I think, buzzwords that are going to help it be compelling there. I hope. I don't know. All right, so that's my draft. And now it's time for you to kind of do a draft of what you're thinking so far. And you can pause and rewind and look back to my abstract, my description. And you can also look back at the ones that I pulled from NCTE. And this would be a good time to like pause and do some drafting there. Okay. So next we want to do one more check after we have our draft is look at genre specific craft. And this is just going to kind of go back to our genre study. Do you have a who? Do you have a what? Do you have a how? Do you have any language that's going to ground it in theory or beliefs or some sort of pedagogy that whoever's reading it, they're going to look at it and be like, oh yes, I know what that is. The person knows what they're talking about. So it doesn't require like intense, citations or anything. There's not a lot of space for that, but you can show that you know what you're talking about and the theories behind it in the language that you choose, right? So look back through your draft and see how is your title, how is your abstract, do you have who, what, how, who's going to benefit, key terms, grounding, all those kind of things. Okay, so we're checking through that. Then we move into the asset-focused peer conferring. Get a friend to read your draft, or a colleague or an instructor or a mentor, but get someone to read this. So share with the call briefly, and they're going to have no problem doing this because it's super short. You can just send it in an email or share your Google Doc with a friend, or just like go on the Instagram or something and say, hey, does anyone have 5 minutes to help me out? And they can take a look, and you're going to say, okay, do you know who this is for? Do you know what it's about? Do you know why it matters? Any of those things, and your peer is going to tell you right away. I bet that in just the sharing and thinking about it having a public audience, you're going to get a good sense of what you might need to work on, because chances are when you know somebody else's eyes are going to be on it, you take another closer look at word choice and things like that, and you might even make some refinements. And that takes us to our next one, is making time to refine and reflect. So after you get some peer feedback, after you go back and look at the mentor text, after you check the call one more time, you want to just refine your wording. And this is not the worst thing in the world, is to go onto the ChatGPT and put in your abstract and ask ChatGPT to make it 100 words or 150 words, and see how it moves around your language and your phrasing to optimize it for the proposal or for the genre, and see if any of that with some refining of your words or phrases. You might reject everything that the ChatGPT tells you, or you might find some key phrases that help narrow down or make more clear what your intentions were. So that's helpful to use that as a resource for you. And then finally, check the due date for the proposal and publish, which means submit your proposal. Now, some give you an immediate email, an automatic email with your proposal, so you have that for your records, because when you get accepted and you're like, oh my gosh, what did I propose? I don't remember my title, I don't remember my abstract, you have a record of it. But also, if you've been doing the drafting, you also have a record as well. What I like to do is to create a folder for each conference that I go to. So I have an OKCTE folder where I've presented at the last couple of years. Actually, I didn't present last year, but I presented the years before. So I have a folder where I have my proposals there. I have a folder for proposals for NCTE. And if I go to new conferences, I just have a folder for my proposals. And then I have that ready when I start making my slides or handouts for the actual presentation. you submit your proposal, you can celebrate that you've made this incredible step. You can even go to your CV and you can write your conference title, your the date of the conference and location of your conference, and just write, submitted. Like that's a line on your CV that it's submitted. And then once it's accepted, you can write accepted. And then once you've presented, you can write presented. So it becomes this line on your CV that you get credit for as you're working toward other things. And then also as a teacher, you add this to your resume and add this to your annual review. So when your principals or editors ask you about your professional learning or your leadership capacity, you say, I wrote a proposal to present at one of these conferences. And then maybe you eventually do as well, which would be fantastic. But hopefully you will because you've taken the time to go through the whole writing process. Okay. Okay, so we've done a little bit of work here with our writing process flow to create a conference proposal. And so I hope that this has worked well for you, that you have a good draft now, and maybe that you've already submitted this to your state organization or national organization, or maybe you're now on the lookout for other conferences that you can write proposals for because you have even more ideas. Maybe they didn't align with this particular proposal, but this conference, but maybe they'll fit with another conference. So lots of opportunities for doing some presenting. I think you'll grow from the experience of presenting to your colleagues, of the affirmation and the validation that comes from being invited to present your work, the collegiality that develops among the participants that come to your session. This is an incredible thing. I've met so many friends and have really expanded my network by presenting at these different conferences and met so many great educators that really keep my teaching life alive and thriving because of these opportunities. Even though, of course, yes, I'm nervous to present in front of other people. I have a lot of social anxiety, but I just get over myself because what I have to offer can benefit somebody else. And if it benefits even one person, it's worth it for me. I hope that you like this. If you like it, please comment below on things that have been helpful. If you have other questions or ideas for videos, please let me know. And otherwise, I'll see you next time. See ya.